I wasn't looking at that. I was looking at notes. All right. Welcome to Empowered Parenting in our Mighty Network. And we're going to talk about the power of praise today. So it turns out that there's been some fabulous research on praise, and there's some really interesting things that the researchers have learned. And so they took a bunch of different kids and they gave them some activities to do with puzzles, and then they gave them some praise. And it was either a line of praise about how their effort, how hard they worked on the puzzle, or it was some praise about how smart they were. And so then they gave them another puzzle, and they asked them if they would want to choose a really challenging puzzle or they'd want to choose an easy one. And they found that those that were praised for their effort chose the harder puzzles. And then after they'd given them this extra hard puzzle that they couldn't really complete, right? They then asked them for a third puzzle, which was an easy one, if they would, want to do an easy one or a hard one again. And the people who are the kids, right, that participated in this experiment and that, really struggled to get through this stuff and were praised for their smarts, when they couldn't get the second puzzle, they decided for themselves that they weren't that smart after all. And so then they didn't want to even try a challenging puzzle for the third time around. And even though it was about the same level of difficulty, they had a harder time completing the third one. So it was really interesting how praising kids for their smarts or their intelligence tends to backfire when they run into life's inevitable struggles and challenges, and they don't end up developing much in the way of grit or resiliency. So what we can do is we can really focus on trying to recognize their effort and that kind of thing. And so, some praise that looks like, smarts and intelligence would be something like, hey, this is amazing. You're so talented. You're a natural artist. Like, I couldn't do that when I was your age. And if we recognize their effort instead, then it sounds something like, wow, you worked so hard on this and it shows. And I can tell you've been practicing. So the praise is super powerful, but praise for smarts and intelligence actually reveals that, it's like the inverse power of praise, because it ends up having such a big impact on the kids. So kids love praise, and they love it when you gush over something and all that. But what we're learning is that it presents just a huge risk in terms of their opinion about themselves. And when they run into life's inevitable struggles, they're going to probably walk out of it thinking that they're not so smart, instead of what we want, which is that they can tackle anything. So there you go.
Right. I think that's so important that you bring up how we want to help them have more resilience, right? That's the key when we're trying to give them encouragement, is that they can get through the ups and downs and know that they have what it takes. So building that resilience, that's what I love about that.
Yeah, and I remember hearing about some research on grit too. Like, this is their term for, we want to help children develop grit, and so they can handle those kinds of adversities that they're going to encounter in life. And this is one of the ways that contributes to that.
Yeah, I see so often in the schools with the children that I work with, and even in my own son, where they get so frustrated so easily and want to give up so easily. And I think that this isn't a good example of what can happen when we give that praise, with all good intentions, but it, like you said, can backfire. So that's why I think it's so important to be more conscious. And also, I love the fact that you're saying, you're not saying totally give up on praise, because I know a lot of parents I work with are like, what? But for all these years, we've been told how important praise is, right? And it could be so hard to break that habit. But instead, you don't have to totally give up on the praise, but just make those important shifts like you're talking about.
Yeah, I think that's good as well. And and I like, likewise, kids need a fair amount of encouragement, right? And when they're running into things that don't go as planned, and they need a little boost to try and get them back on track again. But I think also the part of the research that really shocked me was that with girls, they found that the smartest girls were the ones that crashed or collapsed the most after they ran into something that they couldn't fix and they decided that they were not smart or not intelligent. And I'd heard other research that showed that when kids kind of have this idea that they can just get by on their smarts and they don't really have to work hard and all that, and when they get into high school and they run into stuff that they really can't figure out, that they actually have told stories about kids that went from A's to F's in one semester or one quarter because they just totally gave up on school. They're like, oh, I can't do this, and they just quit. And that's really serious consequences. So.
Yeah, I actually seen that happen with two of my sons. My oldest son was always super smart and this was before positive discipline. So I did a lot of the old fashioned praise. And all of a sudden his senior year, it got really tough. And he just tanked and struggled to get through the year. And then I see it with my youngest, who has always been super smart and way ahead and straight A student. But then when, coronavirus quarantine hit now, it's a struggle for him. And he just wants to give up. So yeah, really building that resilience is really important.
Yeah, I think I've seen very similar things. My daughter, when she, tries something, and as long as it's going well and kind of going according to plan, then she's having a great time. And as soon as something just seems insurmountable and she struggles with it and can't quite get it to go like she wants, or it's not turning out like she hopes, then she just wants to stop because it's not fun anymore and just wants to quit entirely. Yeah, so totally see that.
Right. And I like the shift that we talk about in positive discipline too, that the praise should be more about the person, the child, than about ourselves. So instead of like we're all used to saying, I'm so proud of you, but making that shift and saying you should be so proud of yourself.
Oh, that's a really good one, because one of the other phrases that I picked up along the way is, shifting from "I'm proud of you," which is a statement about me as a parent, right, to "I'm so impressed with what you did." So it's not that I feel good about me. That's not what I'm doing, but I'm really impressed with what you did. Like, you made a big impression on me. So that's another way I think that's a good alternative to deliver it.
Yeah. Well, wonderful. I think this was a great conversation. I hope that you all have found this very helpful. And we will be here every Sunday at 3:30. So tune in for our next week. All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening.